Hello, my name is Justin Coffey, and today I want to talk about people-first language. To get started, we should define what is people-first language. People-first language is a way of communicating about a person or group of people which focuses on the value of the person rather than their disability. So this is a way of talking without defining a person by their disability and still acknowledging the disability, but putting the value on the person rather than the disability. So let me give you some kind of non-examples first, or some identity first language. And these are some examples of things that I heard in the hallways of my school when I was teaching. So someone might say, I have a nonverbal student in my class. Or I have 6 special ed students in my classroom. Or, have you met the autistic student? I have a deaf student in my math classroom. And so all of those put the identity before the student, right? Like autistic student, identity before the student. And perhaps there's a better way to talk about a person where you put the value on the person and then kind of the adjectives after the person. And so we call that people first language. So what I want to show you is some examples on how we could change some of those identity first and switch them to people first. So instead of saying I have a nonverbal student in my class, you could say Maria is one of my students and she communicates through an app on her iPad. Rather than saying I have 6 special ed students in my classroom, a people-first way to say that would be, I have 6 students in my classroom who have been diagnosed with a learning disability. Rather than saying, have you met the autistic student? A people-first way to say that is, have you met Andrew? He's a great artist, he enjoys comic books, and he has autism. And then finally, instead of saying, I have a deaf student in my math class, one could say, Leslie is one of my students, and she uses a device to help her hear. All of these examples put the person first and their disability second. Another great way to talk about a student is by talking about their strengths first, and then their interests, and then any disability that they may have. So those are people first language. That's another way to talk about people, and I think that's super beneficial and a good way to talk about students. However, as I was thinking about this assignment and preparing for it, I just so happened to be on Twitter, and yesterday, just kind of randomly, I ran across a thread on Twitter talking about this exact issue, talking about people first language. And there was a teacher sharing about how we need to use people first language. And then there was a long conversation, discussion attached to her tweet from people with disabilities saying, no, actually, I prefer identity first language. And so here's one tweet from that thread. This is from Dr. Laura Dorwart. And she says, that's not true. Many of us with disabilities aren't ashamed of them and feel no need to distance ourselves from them, least of all by euphemisms. Please read more work by disabled scholars, activists, journalists before making public service announcements. And so I think it kind of brings to light this idea that our classrooms are full of diverse people. And those diverse people have different values and different beliefs. And some might prefer people first language and others might prefer identity first language. And so talking with the student, having that conversation and figuring out how they prefer to be referred to is, I think, an important thing that we can do as teachers, and just know that not everyone is going to fall under the same umbrella or the same blanket. So I included this Twitter thread in my resources, and here's a list of the references that I used in creating this presentation, and hopefully that gave you some information about what People First Language is and how it can benefit our students. Thank you so much.